Have you ever heard of Bob Filner? Or maybe you know him as Congressman Bob Filner. Well, Bob Filner is running for mayor of San Diego County. And we had the privilege of sitting down with him and asking him a few questions of what is a mayor? And what can a mayor do to help pension reform, education, veterans, and of course, creating jobs in San Diego County. So if you've never heard of Bob Filner before, please sit back and relax and let's meet him. A little bit about yourself. You went to Cornell, is that correct?
Yes.
Of course, my question is, any reason you didn't choose Vassar?
A little bit.
Back
is that co-ed now?
Yeah, it is. Back in 1961, you went to Mississippi in what they call the Civil Rights or the Freedom Rides. Can you tell us a little bit about that era of time and what made you make that decision to go down?
We were, in the early 60s, it was really the beginning of the Civil Rights Movement. And I had met Dr. King when I was 13 years old. And by 15 years old, I was helping him organize demonstrations. And so when I saw the pictures of this first Freedom Ride, which was an attempt to integrate public facilities in interstate commerce, and people were met with violence and arrests. But the first Freedom Ride, the bus, the Greyhound bus, was firebombed. People pulled out and almost beaten to death. And that made, of course, national news. And when I saw that picture of this firebombing and the bus on fire, I said, this is not what America ought to be. And I basically joined the Freedom Rides, took the next bus, ended up in Mississippi. They sentenced me to 6 months. We served 2 months in the state penitentiary. And then we appealed the case, the arrests that were based on the laws of segregation. And the whole point of the Freedom Rides was to get those court decisions into a federal court based on interstate commerce. And so eventually my case went to the Supreme Court. They overturned not only our convictions, but the whole legal structure of segregation. And I said, wow, and you have changed American history. That's pretty powerful. But I got a tremendous optimism about change in America, that if you work for it, it was not the safest thing to do. I had friends killed. You can change America, and it led to my running for office and some of the things I've done since.
And after, now, how long was it from your arrest to the court's decision?
It took a couple of years, actually, to get to the court.
And at that time you were studying chemistry, is that correct?
I was an undergraduate in chemistry at Cornell.
And then you got your PhD in history.
In my last year of college, I took a course that I fell in love with called the History of Science.
Right.
And decided to do graduate work in there. I got a PhD at Cornell finally, and then came to San Diego State to teach history. But I decided to run for school board, and unexpectedly won. And we went to work to try to focus resources of the school system on children. Pretty radical
concept of school for children,
right?
Yeah.
So we cut bureaucracy and put money in the classroom. But out of that, I ended up running for the city council. Was elected twice to city council, and then 10 times to Congress.
All right. When we come back after this break, we're going to discuss a little bit about right into the issues here in San Diego. Congressman Bob Filner, now running for mayor. The number one hot topic is pensions. When we come back, we're going to discuss pensions and his plan to help save them and go forward. Thank you for watching. We'll be right back. This episode of Explore San Diego is possible by a grant from the new car department at Pacific Nissan. Every election has a hot topic. This year's no different. I'm standing on the corner of 8th and J to symbolize this year's hot topic, pension reform. To my left, Firehouse Station number 4, symbolizing the civil workers and their pension. Behind me, Petco Park and the renovation of downtown in the early 90s. So the question is it the civil workers' pension that's the problem, or was it the expansion and mismanagement of funds for downtown? Bob Filner weighs in on his thoughts and his solution to fix the pension crisis. Welcome back to the San Diego Community Newspaper Group. My name is Walter Ruskin. Sitting next to me is Congressman Bob Filner, running for mayor of San Diego County, correct?
San Diego City. Let's get this right. You're such an ugly news team.
Yeah, I know. See, that's the best part. See, when you're with a PhD and I'm sure you just, you're here with, I want to learn things. So this is why we're here today. We want people to learn. It's a city.
Happy to teach.
I appreciate that, sir. In June 26, Stockton, California filed bankruptcy. And some of the reports are based on some of their structure is that one of the big problems they had is the pension. How vulnerable is the pension, and what is the real correct, responsible thing to do?
You know, I think we better understand first the causes of it, because we had a proposition on the ballot, Proposition B, and the assumption was that it was the public employees that caused the problem, therefore they have to pay the price at solving it. The cause of the problem was twofold. First, and the major cause, was the collapse of the stock market. You know, by the greed of the greed of Wall Street in the early 2000s. That is, every pension fund is invested in the stock market, and if your funds lose half of their market value, you're not going to have the money that you need to pay the pensions when they become due. So every pension fund, states, cities, you know, corporate, everybody lost the value. Now, when you're in a public system, you have to pay those costs out of your revenues, out of taxes. And so to make up the shortfall that the stock market crash caused, and you were right, there's several mayors decided for their own legacies to take money and build, let's say, a Padres stadium or to host the Republican National Convention. They said they would not spend public money to do this. So they raided the pension fund, winked at the employees and said, don't say anything, we'll raise your benefits just to keep you quiet. So we raise benefits, meanwhile the value is falling, so that leaves you a debt. But it wasn't the public employees that caused it, it was the politicians and the greed on Wall Street. So the problem is we have a major debt in which we have to make annual payments, and the annual payments are approaching a third of the budget. You can't run a city when a third of your budget is going to your credit card, basically. So how do we solve that? Now, Proposition B on the ballot said, let's just cut the pensions from new employees. So I don't think that's a long-term answer. You still have the debt to deal with.
Correct.
So you have to take money out of your budget every year to pay the debt. And Proposition B on the ballot did nothing about that. It set up a new system for new hires and said, you're not going to have a retirement system anymore, you'll have a 401k. I think that's unfair because these people don't have Social Security, by the way. Public employees for our city do not have Social Security, so you're putting them subject to this 401k. But we have very few new hires, so it's not going to impact. But we don't pay off our debt. That's the weakness of Prop B. What I want to do is, as we have brought the pension system under control, and we can do a few more things, like put a cap. Why should anybody get more than $100,000 pension? And that's what's happening for management employees. Let's put a cap on that. What I do is refinance our debt, because interest rates are the lowest point in our history. I mean, if you had an 8% mortgage on your home, and you can get a 2 3/4% that you hear advertised all the time on the television, you'd be not very bright if you didn't refinance your debt. So that's what I want to do with our city's debt. So it brings down the annual cost. So we put new money, that refinance puts in $500 million into our general fund.
I do have a question, which is very similar to Stockton had a solution to that, and obviously they're in bankruptcy right now. They were doing much like refinancing of a home, as if you just shared with us, and they were doing these arms, and what was happening was, as they were increasing and their debt was to be due. So are you saying to do a fixed loan?
Fixed rate, what they call pension obligation bond, at, let's say, 5.5%, because what we're paying now is 7.5%. Okay. And when you're refinancing $1 billion,
that's a lot. No, but you understand the concern of saying, let's just do a 1% arm. And
any investment, any bond has risks. But our pension fund now is in the stock market, so it has risks.
Okay.
I just want to finance it at a much lower interest rate. It puts $500 million into general fund without new taxes. We bring down the debt, and so we can do things like fill potholes and keep libraries open, keep rec centers open.
Oh, really? So
fire stations
open.
So
so when I have a pothole, I don't have to really hate public employees.
I hope so. That is, when I'm mayor, we're going to fix them within 2 days. So I think it was a wrong-headed approach for Prop B, but it has passed. As mayor, I will implement it.
Right.
And we'll move forward.
Okay. When we come back, we're going to discuss jobs and job creation, green jobs, blue jobs, purple jobs, jobs for you and me. So we'll be right back. Thanks for watching. This episode of Explore San Diego is made possible by a grant by the pre-owned department of Pacific Nissan. In this section of our interview, we discuss with Congressman Bob Filner what can a mayor really do to help increase jobs in San Diego County? Well, Mr. Filner has a very progressive idea of actually expanding the port of San Diego to commercial vessels. His theory is more private money coming into San Diego creates more jobs. In addition, being an advocate of green energy and knowing that the U.S. government has set aside millions of dollars for startup companies, he wants to bring that money to San Diego so that new entrepreneurs can help create energy of the future. We're back with Bob Filner. We're going to talk about jobs. Now,
Especially the one I'm after, mayor.
mayor. Yeah, first thing is, what can a mayor do to increase jobs in a city?
You know, it's amazing. The mayor of San Diego has incredible, not only authority and power within the city, but as a regional leader. And the mayor has not only legislative and executive authority, but the bully pulpit to provide leadership. And we can do things even without federal and state intervention. I'll give you two examples. Number one, we have one of the most beautiful ports in the world. Biggest Navy base, great tourist area. But you don't see a lot of ships coming in and out like you would in LA or New York or San Francisco or Seattle. They are maritime centers. We are not. The potential for middle-class jobs of a maritime center is just incredible. Thousands of jobs. We should be moving more and faster toward that. That takes leadership. That says we're going to put the infrastructure in to bring ships in. We're going to make sure trucks can get in and out and a train can get in and out easily. It takes leadership more than money because shipping companies and others will pay for that infrastructure. You need to focus on it and say, we're going to do this.
I'm all about the port expanding. It sounds like a very progressive, let's do business type of idea. So how are you going to convince environmentalists and people and keep the costs down and yet have businesses invest in our infrastructure, such thing as a port, because it is a wonderful port.
You
know, how are you going to overcome those issues in a timely fashion so that we can reap the benefits of a port almost yesterday?
You know, you've just defined the job of the mayor. The mayor has to take into account competing interests and try to develop, not only lead forward, but to try to reconcile competing interests and come out, if possible, with win-win solutions. And I think, number one, by the way, the environmental issues are relatively minimal because we already have the Navy in there. There are reports and there are studies and you get experts and you can do this. It's still the leadership. And I think you can resolve those issues in a reasonable time frame while moving forward. That's what leadership does. I'll tell you another thing we could do, and again, it shows what government can do. I can't hire people to do something, for example, but I could create a policy which says all public buildings will be solar powered in 5 years. Look at the demand that would create for solar panels, for photovoltaic cells. Small businesses expand.
Then why hasn't anyone done that in the past then?
Lack of leadership. My research shows that, for example, there are companies that will install all this equipment and you pay for it by the savings on your electric bill.
Right.
So we could afford it.
Well, I have another question though. Here's my question. Being a congressman and understanding how, I guess, having a working knowledge of how to navigate around Washington. With your skill set and knowledge of how to do things, would you be able to possibly help companies grow, new companies in solar technology?
No question. I mean, that's one of the advantages I have, I think, in this mayor's race, that I have experience at the national, even international level that would allow me to know where money is and navigate that thing and help bring money into San Diego.
So would you actually, and I hate using the word task force, but would you actually try to, in your leadership, create an organization, a team that would help expedite companies?
They're small. We have, there's some existing apparatuses like a Small Business Advisory Committee, which we would try to reinvigorate and expand and do that kind of technical assistance.
Well, the reason I asked to tell you some of the hard things that we had to do to establish a business here in San Diego. The first thing we had to do is we had to go to City Hall and file a fictitious business name. After which we had
to streamline that thing.
After that, we had to actually put an ad in the newspaper, and now we're in business.
Did you have to pay a license?
Oh, yes, well, yes.
$35?
I think it was as much as, yes, $35. So my question is, Where is this misconception that City Hall is mandating business failure?
Well, part of it's just purely ideological. It's an attack on government per se, that people who think that their taxes are going to the wrong things want to always undermine sense of what government is. There's some kernel of truth there. There are stupid rules, and there is duplicative processes, and there are permits that take forever. You want to put if you're a restaurant and you want to put a patio outside your thing, there's a whole permit process. I think we should pay people to do that because it makes the neighborhood better. But I want to put timelines on all that thing. No permit should take more than 60 days or 90 days. So we can streamline that thing, but mainly it's an ideological attack on government per se, and it's also, it gives somebody like Mr. DeMaio something to say when he says, what are you going to do about jobs? Oh, we're going to streamline regulations.
When we come back, we're going to talk about health care with Congressman, soon to possibly to be a mayoral elect. I love that word, mayoral. Do you like it?
I love it.
All right, we'll be right back right after this. This episode of Explore San Diego is made possible by a grant by the Parts Department at Pacific Nissan. The United States Supreme Court recently ruled in favor of 5-4 that the Affordable Health Care Act was constitutional. I sat down with mayoral hopeful Bob Filner and asked him what the role of the San Diego mayor will be with this new law and how we could help businesses and citizens better understand it. Welcome back to the San Diego Community Newspaper Group. My name is Walter Ruskin. Sitting next to me is Congressman Bob Filner. Affordable health care. Robert's ruling that the Affordable Care Act likes to be called Obamacare, passed. Your thoughts?
Well, I was very pleased with it. I voted for the original bill, and I was proud to do that because what we are trying to do in that bill, which is found to be constitutional, is increase access to quality health care for 30 million people who don't have it. It seems to me that's a good aim, and it says that we should be in charge of our own health care rather than insurance companies deciding. For example, they could cut off people for pre-existing conditions. So it uses the private system of doctors and insurance that we have set up, and says that we're going to increase the access. And the only way to make sure that that works is if everybody has the individual responsibility to take part in it, and that's what the court ruled was constitutional.
Okay, well here's a couple.
And it will bring down the cost, by the way, because everybody
supply and demand. I got basic.
Well, it's not just supply and demand. If you don't have insurance and you end up in the emergency room,
right?
Taxpayers pick up the cost, which is more than if you were going to the doctor on a regular basis. So we're going to save money as taxpayers when people have insurance.
How do you think that then the new Affordable Health Care Act, how do you think it can benefit companies then?
Well, most employers would like to provide for their employees health care. It's very expensive, and so they can't do it. This allows them, because it brings down the cost of the premiums. It allows all their employees to get covered now in a way that they will get, in fact, tax deductions for doing that, which they don't now. So it becomes more cost effective for small companies to have all their employees insured.
Will the city save money then?
I hope so. It's unclear how the private system of insurance is going to respond to all this, because it's still based on a private insurance. So if they bring down the costs as we think they should, it'll save us money. If they try to raise the costs, I think there'll be a demand for more of a single-payer system. Okay.
Well, when we come back, we're going to put a question in the Congressman's wheelhouse. We're going to talk about education. Is that okay? You know something about education?
A little bit.
A little bit. We'll be right back. This episode of Explore San Diego is brought to you by a grant from the Service Department at Pacific Nissan. It's hard for anyone to disagree that education is the cornerstone to any society. Mayoral candidate Bob Filner was an educator before he became a congressman. Here's some insights that he has about the schools of San Diego and where they should be going in the future, and his thoughts on No Child Left Behind. Education. I think this is amazing because I'm learning a lot. I really am, and that's the part of the goal of not just to inform us, hopefully break down who the people are that we're voting for. But to continue education, you were the president of the board. What was the title back when?
Well, first I was a history professor for 20 years at San Diego State. Then I was on the Board of Education and served as its president.
And that was about 20 years ago, correct? A little over 20 years ago.
And I also, of course, I was the only candidate running for mayor whose children went through the San Diego public school system, and my grandchildren are in there. You know, I've had to take stances on national issues, on local issues. We passed some years ago in Congress the so-called No Child Left Behind Act.
Right.
I thought it was a bad act. In fact, but I was only one of 10 or 12 congressmen who voted no. And the single most important reason why I didn't like it, I'm an educator. I was on the school board. I think what it takes to give kids an opportunity and give them excellent education. And one thing you don't do, which this bill is based on, is have everybody judged by the same standardized test. It's not because...
Well, wait a second. But if we're not all judged by the same standardized test, how can we all fall in line and follow the same rules obediently?
Because some of us, and you are, Exhibit A.
Oh, not me, sir. I'm totally just follow the line.
Some people learn in different ways and show their genius in different ways. They don't all know how to take tests.
Tell the people.
See, you obviously are a genius in some very weird ways. And to show that, a test would not be very good.
Well, no, I learned how to take tests in college.
I did too. I learned how to take tests, but people learn in different ways, and they show their learning in different ways. And some people are left brain, some are right brain, some are good at taking tests, some express their genius in dance or song or music or athletics. And if you cannot you can't judge everybody by the same way of the same method of evaluation. Different people need different methods. And what we have done because of lack of resources and cutbacks is that we're concentrating on, just the basic skills, which are important. We all have to learn. But you're not giving the kids the opportunity to learn about music and art and, some sciences just because we can't afford it. So you're giving these kids... You're not giving these kids the opportunity to learn these other areas and where they might show their genius in ways that they can't in just some of the standard tests.
I know what can fix that. What if I get like a voucher and I just go to a school that gives me more opportunity instead of a city school? That's got to be a good idea, right?
No.
Oh, it's not. Tell me why.
Because your voucher... How much is your voucher, by the way?
Let's just say it's $100. I got $100 in education.
$100 ain't going to pay the cost of the private school. So you have to be wealthy enough to make up the difference.
Correct.
So only wealthy kids can take advantage of that voucher. And poor kids would be left in the public system, and poor kids are not as well prepared and don't have the background, so education will get even worse in the public system.
So what you're saying is
you should stay in public school.
But if I was to go to private school, then the argument is if I want to choose to put my children in a private school, that's fine. It is my investment to do so.
You should choose that, but you should not be given public
funds to do so. Imagine that. So that everyone should have an equal opportunity to be educated and maybe contribute to the society?
That's a good Jeffersonian argument. Thank you.
I don't know.
That's what Thomas Jefferson
That just
thought.
sounds like communist talk to me. We'll be right back. We're going to talk about, what else? We're going to talk about veterans. We're going to talk about war. We'll be back in 1 minute. This episode of Explore San Diego is made possible by a grant from the Collision Center at Pacific Nissan. San Diego is America's finest city. I sat down with Bob Filner and asked him about America and San Diego and the freedoms in which we are able to have because of the sacrifices of our military branches. Bob Filner, an advocate for military service and veterans, has a plan to help homelessness for our veterans right here in San Diego.
In a democracy, we have to vote on whether to go to war or not, although sometimes Congress ends up in a war without a true vote. I did not favor the war in Iraq, for example, or the war in Afghanistan. But when we made a decision to go to war, we have to, as part of that decision, make sure all the young people who come back from that war get the health care, the pensions, the benefits that we promised them. We have to take care of them. And especially in these recent wars, where they're subject to blasts and get concussions and brain injury, they're subject to enormous pressures on their psyche, and they get mental illness, and we got to take care of that. So part of the cost of war is treating the veterans when they come home. If for a lifetime, then for a lifetime. And we got to assume those costs. We cannot argue about them. And yet we tend President Bush would say, support the troops, support troops, support troops. But when they came home, he wasn't appropriating the money to take care of their mental health needs. I think you have to be consistent. Take care of them when they come home. I want to make sure the resources say that there's enough psychiatrists and psychologists and counselors to help kids who come back get the help they need. I want to make sure that there are programs to get them off the street and not homeless. I want to make sure they get jobs. A couple things that I'm going to do as mayor. One, I'm going to establish a veterans employment office in the mayor's office to make sure veterans get hired. And you don't need laws really to do that. You don't need mandates or fines. We're a military town.
Do you need a committee?
A task force.
Very good.
We don't need all that. We need to get employers in a room and commit themselves to hiring veterans. We're in a military town. Take care of our own. But in addition, I mean, there are things we can do that the mayor can do to more directly address homeless issues. We got to get some shelter for these folks. And there have been major buildings up for sale that the city has not even tried to get, like a hotel that was closed down or a hospital that was closed. Get those buildings and put 300 or 400 people, not in residential areas, into rooms where they can get off the insecurity of the street and the violence that occurs and the insecurities that result. Let's get them housing. The kind of drug and alcohol abuse and job counseling and education will come, but let's get housing first.
Okay. Now, that's almost the end of our interview. Now I want to get the optimistic view not only of America, of our fine city, San Diego, the city of San Diego, not to be confused with the county of San Diego, but of course, come along to the party. You can all have fun. You were born.
As long as it's the Democratic Party.
Oh, come on. That's the part that I want to get to, actually. In the political world that we see today, it seems to be good versus evil. And my question to you as a leader, how can we stop? We can have differences, but how were you not evil, or how was whomever not evil? How do we stop that dialogue and start really focusing on just being, I guess, Americans?
Well, I think the answer to that, and I'm going to try to do that as mayor, is focus on problems and solutions. Forget, that this is a ideological thing, and if you frame the issues properly, or as a leader, you will not have the ideological concerns. I mean, let's frame the issue of veterans as we have a responsibility to those who defended our nation. Who could be against that? You don't have to say it's the role of government or not the role of government or whatever. Let's frame the issue in a certain way, in that way. Let's frame the economy in that, we want to try to get everybody in San Diego with the opportunity to have a job. Who can be against that? And you try to work together to do that. I have found that if you get all the stakeholders, you get Democrats, Republicans, environmentalists, anti-environmentalists, liberals, conservatives. If you get people at the table in a working mode, they will focus on the issue. You can find the win-win that will in fact transcend those differences and move forward. I think that's what we have to do as a city. We can't move forward with anybody left out. Because anybody can stop something. You got to bring people together, find win-win, and move forward.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, thank you well, first off, let me thank you, Mr. Filner, for inviting us in your office.
Dr. Filner.
Dr. Filner. You're one of those. Yeah. Thank you, Dr. Filner, for inviting us in today.
You are merely a bachelor.
I am a bachelor of science. I'm a science mind. Crazy. We want to thank you.
Is that the left brain or the right brain?
I didn't remember that day of science, sir. He's really putting me on the spot. We want to encourage you to go out, make a difference, go out and vote. Remember, Bob Filner will be coming to a poll near you soon. Anything else you want to add or close for the nice people of San Diego?
You're learning how to do this interview stuff. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, well, I have
learned a lot from you.
Well, I learned a lot from you. And I hope you learned a lot. All right? Be nice. Can we tell people be nice?
Vote for Bob.
He can say that. I can't really endorse any candidate because I don't work for the UT. We'll see you next week.